This is an adobe pump house. This was built by all records in about 1875 by two men named Push and Zellweger. Now, they built this pump house right on the main road out of Tucson, and you're going to hear traffic, and that is still the main road north out of Tucson. They built it on that road, this pump house, and I'll tell you what it was built for in a minute. They built it on that road so that travelers leaving Tucson in a stagecoach could stop here. This was a watering hole. This pump house held a steam pump that brought water from about 70 feet in the ground, and the closest water resource is the CDO over here about 1/8 of a mile behind the barn. Brought the water up through the sand and then put it in a big reservoir that's over there about 100 feet, a big stone reservoir that I understand stood about 10 feet high, and it's about 20 feet in diameter, made out of stone. That reservoir was for the travelers coming on the stagecoach, but main reason it was built was for the cattle. Because in 1875, of course, you know, there were about, maybe 500,000 cattle in this part of Arizona. And they would bring the cattle from the north and the east and the west to this particular ranch to feed them and fatten them and to water them before they took them into Tucson and put them on the railroad train. The railroad was built and started moving out of Tucson in 1880. So in 1885, this was a bustling cattle community. The steam pump house, or the steam pump building, is particularly interesting, and I hope you can get some shots of that. It's original adobe, original rifle slits that were built for people to put their rifles through from the inside of the structure to shoot the Apaches. Because, of course, this was big Apache raiding country. They had an established raiding route right from the Catalinas south, along the CDO to the Santa Cruz River and to Tucson, and the then Papago Pueblos beyond. This building is really kind of interesting because there was another structure that came out. You can see this shot of adobe here, and there's another structure that came this way. 4 more walls ran along here. The material used for the roof of the blacksmith shop is 1/4 inch steel, taken from the Tucson Ice and Storage Company in the early 1900s, another property of George Push and John Zellweger. That was to protect the building from heat and try to make it more pleasant to work inside in this extra little room. There are some interesting ladders on the other side. Maybe we'll get a chance to look at the ladder going up to the roof, and you can see the worn place where the people put their feet over years and years of use. This is the main pump house for the steam pump ranch. Let's take a look inside. We're inside this wonderful structure now, and I'm just going to first describe to you what I see. I just noticed this grand hole in the ceiling that lets in the sky light. Over this way, right above my right hand, is where those gun slots were, those gun slits for shooting guns, rifles at the Apaches. There's a floor that the people would stand on in the attic here. This is the door that goes out to the blacksmith shop and out to those grand trees we've been talking about. On this wall back here is a very important part of the pump house because through this window is where the engine stood that ran the pump. The engines then had a belt. The belt moved through this window. There were big wheels that the belt went over, and the pump was sitting in the little off-center over here in the middle of the cement floor. They did have cement when they laid this floor in 1875. John Lieber, present owner of the ranch, informed me that after the steam pump built up full pressure, it could pump up to 50 gallons of water an hour in the late 1800s, maybe 300 to 400 gallons a day. There are some very interesting cracks in these walls that you can see daylight through, and most archaeologists and anthropologists love to look at cracks. So I'm looking at the cracks. There's one in this wall. There's a great one over here that you can see the light through. Going out from the attic, or where the people stood for their protection, is a shutter. Probably the very original wood shutter. Two beams that come down about a foot and a half wide, and then these huge planks that are made into the shutter. Not our flimsy little pieces of wood shutters we have now, but it looks like they're 2x6s possibly for those wood shutters. You can see the adobe really good up in the rafters. They have plastered on top of the adobe down here in the pump room, probably to help preserve the adobe from the moisture, I would think. This building is, I'm afraid, going to come down probably within the next 10, 15 years. It would be nice if we had some way to preserve it, but right now I don't know of any way to preserve it. It's a shame because it's a very important building to this whole area. Everyone knows about the Steam Pump Ranch.
Waiting for a train 1,000 miles away from home, sleeping in the rain. I walked up to